Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Walton's World here on Softball America. I'm Tim Walton, the head softball coach of the University of Florida and assistant softball coach for the USA Women's National Team. And today I have two really special guests and two-time Olympians and Olympic medalists, national champions. The list goes on and on and on for my two guests, but I'm very happy to have Jenn Salling and Danielle Lawrie, like I said, two Olympians and with Softball Canada. Um, Also, former players of mine. I always joke I don't really claim professional players as mine because I felt like I was just as much on the team as you guys were, just being in the same dugout. But Danielle, I'm gonna start with you, Danielle Lawrie. Obviously, a very accomplished collegiate champion and National Player of the Year. And so, tell us what's going on with you these days, Danielle. It feels like I haven't seen you at our stadium in a
I
couple,
know.
but I know you've done a ton for the game these days.
Yeah, no, we're busy. It is we're in it. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the youth sports piece is blowing up my world. I have a love-hate relationship with it. It's because we're just busy all day, every day. I retired after the Olympics in 20, and was happy about that decision. I think it was a cool stint in time, but God, the wear and tear on the body. I'm not sure how people can play, into their 40s. It's pretty crazy. Still doing the broadcasting piece. I think probably one of the coolest things was being able to go back and do that Olympic cycle, being older and gaining that experience, and then being able to go behind the mic with just, I think, a different perspective on the game, being older, that grind, and also being able to kind of relate to some of those athletes with what they're going through at that current time, because I'd been out of it for a good chunk. So just a proud mom trying to raise some badass daughters. The broadcasting is so fun because I think it always brings me back to those moments in time, right? It kind of teleports me back to when I was in college and I get those same game day feels, right? I think especially when you get to May and it's conference tournaments and the regionals and the supers, like game day, I get nervous. And I think that's probably my most fun part is when I get to talk about it, because I feel like my job is to reiterate to the audience, like what these athletes are feeling and how this is probably one of the most special moments of their lives. And they get 4 years to try to maximize it to the best that they possibly can. So, but I also will say the game is way different than when Jenn and I played, right? Speed dating at its finest with the transfer portal. I don't know about that. That's back in the day. Jenn and I would say, like, and she did enter the portal. When you transfer, it's a big deal, right? It was such a red flag back in the day. Like, dang, what did you do? But now I'd always be interested to hear your take on it too. It's just kind of transformed the way that the college game has gone. And then you add NIL and holy moly, I think we played at a great time, Jenn.
Yeah. Well, I'm super proud of you. Again, we've all, anybody that's been in the sport, the microphone being, put in your dad's face at the College World Series and hearing his take on competition.
Yeah.
The coolest things that I read about you and knew of this about you too was that your younger brother Brett and you both competed in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. And as parents, now you're a parent, you go, man, I mean, it's unbelievable to have a kid in the Olympics, but have two kids in the same Olympics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be just one of the most special things as a parent, to really just to live. I mean, just to be able to wear Team Canada right here and then get to go support two kids in the Olympics. That's tremendous accomplishment for the Lawrie family.
I will say, I mean, Jenn can probably attest to this, but like our softball grind was so different than Baseball Canada at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Like, I felt like we were almost jealous of how much fun they were able to have, right, Jenn? Like, they were always just so chill, always laughing. And for us back in 2008, it was, God, when you talk about the life or death piece, like that's kind of at times what it felt like. Like there was just a different type of pressure. But God, there was a lot of memories that I had, like being able to go have lunch with my brother at the cafeteria, and you are seeing this dream team basketball. And I was like, I will not get an autograph. Like, I will not be seen in that lineup. People are going to be lining up for me. No one asked for my autograph. But like that, it was just kind of one of the coolest environments. And getting to kind of walk for opening ceremonies. Like, I remember walking around with Jenn, because to me, that was like the pinnacle of our sport, right? Like, yeah, we hadn't competed for a national championship yet, but I think my only thing was I wish that I was a little bit older in that moment in time. Like, just being 21 years old, it was so big in this stadium and it was incredible. But like, God, the experience in 2020 and how much I really appreciated the game was significantly different. But that Olympic experience is what put, Jenn and I in the positions we needed to be in for that 2009 team, for what they needed from us. And I don't regret a thing. It's good to go through the lumps and the bumps, because that's what kind of helps you evolve as a person and player. But, my dad still talks about that experience, being able to go back, and it is pretty incredible. And I feel like the older I get, it's okay to talk about the accolade piece. Back in college, I didn't really like to talk about it because I hated how it was always about me, right? And that's how it is in the sport. When you have one pitcher, it's Lauren Hager. It's just kind of how that piece works. So now that I'm older, I can talk about it and be extremely proud. My brother and I were, I think, one of 3 siblings that were at the Olympics, and damn, the gene pool runs pretty strong in the Lawrie family, so no complaints here.
Well, it's talking about you too, Jenn. It's funny as we get older. And again, I'm obviously a lot older than you guys, but I can tell you at my age, and you're being with you guys, I'll go, man, you guys were way better than me. But when I talk to my kids, I tell them just about how good I was really good. I could do all these things. Like when Danielle was telling a story just now, it made me chuckle because my youngest son, Palmer, said, "Hey, Dad, when you were at Oklahoma, were you any good?" And I said to him, well, I was okay. I mean, so Brooks goes, all of a sudden, my oldest son, Brooks, puts on Apple TV, pops into YouTube, pulls in our national championship game when we beat Georgia Tech. And then Palmer goes, "Wait a minute, you won the game? Like, you were the winning pitcher?" I was like, yeah, I mean, it worked out that way, It just chuckle. As we get older, we weren't humble in college. None of us were. I mean, you're a competitor, you're competing, you think you're the best. But as you get older, you start to remember all the tough times and probably remember all the losses and the tough days. But, I think of this is Jenn Salling is one of the best shortstops to play in the NCAA. I mean, and I mean this, like, I go back and the stereotype of Jenn was that, really good defensive shortstop. And you go, wait a minute, a really good defensive shortstop. And Jenn, All-American, freshman of the year at Oregon. And I remember when Stacey Nelson was our pitcher and we faced you guys, I think we gave up 3 hits and you probably had all 3 of them. Like, you hit and hit and hit. And then you go to the Olympics with Team Canada and you transfer to Washington. I think you had to sit out a time there as well. And you may have as well anyway because of the Olympics. But so Jenn, tell us what you're doing these days. Cause I remember just the hardest working person and the toughest competitor, but the toughest competitor that had an edge, but also had a glue about her. Like, you were always involving all the players on the dirt. Like, you were it for me. So what are you doing these days now?
Thank you. Well, that means a lot coming from you. That's for sure. So since retiring from Tokyo, I stepped foot into college coaching, and Bear called and asked if I would be interested in jumping on board with her here at UCF. And just
Cindy Ball Malone is the Bear name. We all know Bear, but
Coach Bear, yeah. And she just asked if I would jump on board and be a part of the vision and what she's trying to do at UCF and going into the Big 12 and getting to a World Series and eventually, hoping to win something someday. So I was like, let's go. So she was an assistant coach when I was at Washington. She was working for Coach Tar. So that's where she and I go back. But philosophically, we have so much alignment. And most importantly, I love who she is as a person. Coach Walton, her, working with her within the USA system. But I'm just very excited about the potential of what we can do. Um, there's not a lot of people I would get into this world for, because it's like Danielle said, a lot has changed. It's very different. And it's also, the quality of life is very limited, as you very well know, Coach Walton. But the more that I'm in it, I really don't know what else I would do. Like, I feel like every day when I wake up, I have a purpose, and I'm like impacting young women's lives to help shape them to be strong and confident and bold, not just within softball, but in life. And I feel like I'm doing exactly what I was called to do. And I feel super, super grateful that Bear has taken a chance on me.
Well, I have a long list of accomplishments for both of you, and going through the Olympics, going through, the basically the gap between your Olympic game career because of the, softball being, out of the Olympics in 12 and 16. But what you said there, I read an article. I watched a couple things on you, and just going through your process and your grind of what it was going to take for you to earn a medal in the Olympics. And it was really cool because it was about Team Canada. And I know Coach Smith and, Team Canada came here to our stadium, and we played and helped, help keep you guys in shape for the competition to get ready for the first attempt at the 2020 Tokyo Games. But one of the things that you said in one of your interviews was that I live my sport. And that was just a quote and so what you just said right there was so inspiring to me to hear, just that you live your sport. And this is you talking about as a player. And now I can easily see that that's what you do with your athletes on the field, is you live through them and you want to help them be their best. Tell us about, tell us about the difference between being a player at your level and now being able to impact people on the field at a different level, because really they are.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something I have been exploring a lot on the day-to-day, is like, and Bears really helped me a lot with this too. It's like, they're not me, and my job is to meet them where they're at and get the best out of who they are and what they bring. And that means like intangibles. So I got to get to know them, and they're not going to do it how I did it, because they're not me, and I can't expect them to be me. And I'm saying that very humbly, if you know what I mean. So
no, you're saying it perfect. Yeah.
I think it's building a relationship with them, building the trust to get the buy-in, I think, is the most important thing. But again, just understanding who they are and how they tick and what gets them going, to help maximize them. And it's just going to look different. And that takes patience and time.
Patience. I get the mom up in my right screen, talk about patience. So and I'm gonna try to do as much of a good job as I can, as far as being able to connect all of the dots. But I did a podcast with Natasha Watley, and probably one of the most decorated players in our game's history, impacted the game so many ways, made shortstop being cool, and you can be offensive as a shortstop, and just the way she played. But we all know her, with the USSSA pride. And she said something to me that was really interesting about, Coach Enquist, her coach. And you guys all played for Coach Tarr. And I know JT had a huge impact on you, at shortstop, really your whole defensive scheme in general. But one thing that Natasha said to me that I thought was really interesting, I really thought a lot about this, and is that she really felt that she didn't feel like she could coach because she wasn't Coach Enquist. Like, she just felt like Coach Enquist was the best. She brought out the best in Natasha, and Natasha didn't feel like, I won't say the word worthy, but she just didn't feel like she was as good of a coach as Coach Enquist. And I joke, because I'm like, Natasha, this isn't about Coach Enquist. This isn't about Natasha. It's about the players. The players are the ones that need the impact. And I had the same conversation with Francesca and Nea. You guys all played with Francesca with the Pride. She's now my assistant coach, first year coach, mom. She's battling, and she's like, I just want to do it the way you do it. I'm like, listen, I don't do it the way I do it for Jenn or for Danielle or for Francesca. And I do it different for each one of them because I'm coaching you to be your best. And I'm sure that's something that you've learned now as, you've been coaching now long enough, Jenn, to know that you're not coaching. You're not really coaching for you. You're coaching for them, and you're trying to push their buttons and get them to understand who they are as athletes, as people. And I think that's the one missing thing that, you can copy people's, I copy all the time. I see someone doing the drill, you're doing a drill. We're playing UCF in the fall. You're doing a drill. I'm like, oh, I really like that pregame. It's a really good primer to get the throws ready to go. It's a really good, activity, to get as close to game day feel without having to put them through a full practice. And I'm sure that that's some of the things that younger coaches struggle with, is trying to be their mentor or trying to be like the coach that impacted them. Do you feel that struggle sometimes, or have you completely been able to say, this is who I am, and I know what I want to do as far as my coaching, navigating my coaching path?
Yeah, no, for sure. I can relate to that 100%. Like I think it's, especially from like a motivational standpoint, or like what gets them going, or what gets them like understanding concepts. Like, it's number one, like the grit and the fight and the confidence. I can't give that to you. I can empower you to like go be it and give you some skills and tools to like feed the confidence bucket. But at the end of the day, the belief has to come like from within. And that's one of the biggest things I think I've seen so far, is like the trust in themselves when they're out there competing. Like, I want them to have that, and I have it in them, but they have to have it within themselves. And I find that's been like a little bit tricky for me, because I see how confident some of them are in practice, and then when it comes to game, it's like, where did that person go? And I just stick with them and try to do my best to just keep like, feeding the good voice kind of thing. But
well, and very, very rare, not very rarely, but it's sometimes hard for really good players to be really good coaches, because it's hard to relate to people that maybe aren't as good as what you were, or you just did something without thought, and it was something you really did a really good job, and you can't teach it because you just have it, and I think those are the things that, the thing. But so
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is, like, just in general in our sport right now, it looks to me that the ability to handle failure or outcomes that the girls don't get, it's hard for them to recover. Like, their recovery time is a lot slower. And I feel like I've always seen the game as a process versus like hanging your hat on every single swing or every single ground ball or every single thing that happens. Like, it's just like information. It's not your identity. It's not a failure. It's not who you are.
But unfortunately, in 2000, I think your last year was 2011. Every failure moment these athletes have these days, somebody's DMing them on the side to tell them how bad they were, or how much they didn't do well, or it's just all the noise that happens. And it's really hard, because the noise used to be, newspaper articles or internet articles. And now the news is so much easier to, and I'm not saying if you're going to read your headlines when you're going good, you better be ready to read your headlines when you're going bad. I mean, that's something that I've always tried to train our athletes to be, but it's harder because you just get so much more scrutiny from it. It's just easier to criticize. And I think that's where athletes are striving so much for the perfection. They want to be perfect. They want to, nobody's perfect. I mean, it's really hard to be perfect. I mean, and then I joke about that, and I go, well, nobody's perfect. Well, Danielle's pretty perfect with most of the stuff that she did as a pitcher. I mean, who can strike out 20 players in a game? Who can? Oh, and by the way, then your team's struggling a little bit. I'm going to hit a home run just to go ahead and win the game, just because. And
that 4-hole DL rock.
Yeah,
good old days.
The good old days. That's right. Well, I went through and I tried to. Again, keep this about each one of you separately, but there's so much you guys have in common. You guys have, so I wanted to really dive into. So I won't say I created this because I had an idea. I got with Tara Henry. We wanted to talk about just the experiences that she has as the Great Britain national team coach, my experience as the USA softball assistant coach and championships and stuff. So growing the game has really been a passion of mine to not just growing the game like, oh, let's talk about championships and let's talk about, but growing the game to a level. Team Canada, and I talk about Team Canada, and I think that when I, from, again, a few steps away, watch Team Canada and learn about Team Canada and listen to what motivates Team Canada. I think that some of the things that, Jenn, you said this, and I think this is, really cool because this, to me, this embodies the Canadian national team and you guys and all the things you did. But you just said our culture cares about being physically fit, using that as one of the competitive advantages. And I watched that with you guys. And so for Danielle and you both had a kind of a last run. You made the Olympics your last softball, Team Canada especially, but you made that your kind of your going away party, your last game, everything about it. But tell me about the experiences. And I'll start with you, Danielle, but go through because I went through and looked, and you guys have pretty much medaled with the exception of 2008. You've medaled in everything that you guys competed in. You medaled in the World Championships. You medaled in the Pan Am Games. You medaled, now medaling, and tell me what it's like to go through your career really with one heartbeat, because that's what in my envision of what I feel about Team Canada is it's one heartbeat. You guys are training, you guys putting in the time, you're logging your hours. I mean, you're doing it not only for yourself, but you're doing. So tell me about the cherry on top to your career for Team Canada. And we can talk about the sacrifices because I know they're tremendous mentally and physically, but talk about what it meant to be, because when you win the bronze is legit because you earned it. You earn it. Silver, I mean, we've all been silver medalists. It stinks. You earned that too, but you didn't really, you don't earn it by victory. It's one of those. So tell us about that journey, and then I'll ask you the same for you, Jenn. You can chime in whenever, but tell us about that, Danielle.
Yeah, so that 2008 grind was completely different than going back to do the Olympics a little bit older and what was expected of us, right? Like when we made that Olympic run and had to do the redshirt year in 2008, and we had a lot of young athletes on that team, like Jenn and I, Jen Yee, who was playing at Georgia Tech, who was a candidate for National Player of the Year the following year. Like we had some really young talent. And, I say this with the utmost respect, with a fairly new head coach, right? Like Lawrie Sipple had been the assistant coach at Nebraska, was the pitching coach, had played with the Canadian national team. And I think when you become a head coach, it's a different pressure cooker that you're in. It's almost like what you just talked about with the social media piece, because you feel all this pressure, all the media, like you need to help get your team to win an Olympic medal. In 2008, dude, we were this close. That's what I think was the most heartbreaking piece for me. But the grind was so different. What was expected of us was obviously to kind of give up our life in 2008 and travel. And we lived in Las Vegas for a couple months and went over to Japan and Australia and kind of did that grind. And it was great. But I can't say, I almost felt like a misfit toy for a long time. Like I just never felt like this was my home. And it was the most eerie feeling, right? Because when you wear your country across your chest, you're supposed to feel this sense of like, wow, I'm so proud. But that Olympic grind for a long time just felt like I was never good enough. And that's really sad to say. But when you're playing with women that are significantly older, that have had that experience, that went to the Olympics in Athens in 2004, I just always felt like I was trying to play catch up and wanted someone to help kind of navigate that process and help me get where I needed to be. But I also know that like I was a tough cookie, right? Like I had an attitude. I was probably ignorant and not as receptive to some things, but I also think that needs to be coached differently. where someone lays into me and lets me know, dude, you got to be better for this team. You want to be a part of an Olympic team? You want to try to go fight for a medal? Like, you have to be better. No one ever told me that. So, you know, that Olympic grind and us going to that bronze medal game. And I know I've made this comment before on social, and Jenn can attest, like, it's different when you go and there's 8 teams. Like, there was only 6 teams at the last Olympics. So there's a little wiggle room to struggle. I got to pitch a little bit more because there was more games, but I struggled a little bit, and I always felt like I needed to prove something to the team. And before we were going to play the bronze medal game, we had the off time in between. And not a lot of people know this, but we weren't allowed to go watch any other sports. Like, I wasn't even allowed to go watch my brother play. And we had that day off before the medal round started. And I remember going up to Coach Sipple and just saying, like, is there any way I can go watch my brother play? They got a noon game. Like, I'll sit in the shade. I just want to go watch. Like, that to me is a part of the Olympic experience. COVID Olympics doesn't count because we just weren't allowed. But, like, my brother's here and I want to watch him compete, right? Even though he was riding the pine majority of the time. I just wanted to be there. But we weren't allowed to go. So that hit me the wrong way. And then that night, Sipple called me into a room and said, hey, Lauren Bay's struggling. You're going to get to start. You're going to start the bronze medal game. And I feel like that was my one mental just, oh, shit. Like, this is going to be my chance to try to really, like, help get this team its first Olympic medal. Was going through all the Ken Revisa stuff, like the mental preparation. Like, I went back up to my room.
Going backwards, would you want to know you're getting the ball the night before, or would you want to know you're getting the ball the day of?
Oh, the night before.
Okay. I always wonder that sometimes because you can wonder, some could tie themselves up into a knot. So I was curious about that.
I like to know, like, shoot, when we were playing you guys, I knew I was starting in the national championship. I was going through.
We were hoping you weren't. We were hoping you were going to take a day off, like miss curfew or something.
No. So she told me I was getting the ball, going through everything in my head, going through Australia's hitters, like, and then that next day I went for breakfast with my brother and came up to get changed and went on the elevator on the way down, and Sip was on the elevator and she's like, yeah, you're not starting anymore. And I think, like, being 21 and ignorant, that was a really tough thing to hear. Like, that cut me deeper than I think anything ever has in the sport. And Jenn was the first one I talked to when I got off the elevator, like, crocodile tears starting to swell, right? Like, I cannot control this emotional piece. I don't have that piece right now because I'm such a competitor. And if that's my downfall, that was my downfall. Like, I wanted to be the one, and I wanted it to be me to help get this team where they needed to go. And I remember Jenn saying, like, we still have a chance to be a medal, be a rock solid teammate right now. And I didn't take that advice. I wasn't a good teammate in that game. And, you know, for people that are listening to this, like, if there's those moments where you're wishing other people to fail because you want to be the one in that moment, that is 100% what I was wanting to happen. And that's such a really shitty thing to say and to think. And obviously I'm a completely different player after going through that, but that's my biggest regret from the Olympics. I'm not proud of that. We lost that game, and Coach Tar was there, and we lost that game, I think, in the 6th inning. And I remember going to Coach Tar after the game and just hugging her and being like, there's no way we won't win a national championship next year, because I've just never felt like this before in my life. So the experiences that we went through in that Olympics put me in a position to be a way different teammate and figure out the work piece that I needed to do to be mentally tougher. Because what I learned in 06 and 07 in my softball career at UW was, like, mentally, I'm not where I need to be. I get to that threshold where it gets really, really hard, and that hint of doubt creeps in, and then that takes over instead of me knowing how badass of a pitcher I am, right? And then you flip to that, making that decision to come out of retirement. And it was the summer of 2017, and the World Cup of Softball was on, and Michelle said she was at her best at 34-35, and it just kind of clicked. And I had been out of dibs with the Olympic team. Like, I hadn't talked to Jenn in a while. I hadn't talked to Rafter. Like, I was scarred from Mark Smith a little bit because he's a tough guy to play for. He was tough. But I just thought to myself, like, if I can make this commitment to this grind and potentially help a team qualify for an Olympics at the time, like, that would be pretty cool to do with a family. And Audrey was 9 months and Maddie was 2.5 when I went back to go train. And UW was my first call, actually, before I called my husband or told my husband, because I needed Coach Tar and Lance to help me get where I needed to go too. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed the university. I needed Glass to help me get back into pitching shape. And yeah, I think the most proud that I ever was that commitment to that grind through all of it. When COVID hit, to, you know, long days being away from family. But the best part about it was like Rafter, Jenn, and I all got to live together that Olympic year in 21. And like when I say that there was multiple days where I wanted to bail, like more days than not. And like it would take Jenn and it would take Rafter to have those conversations with me of like, you have one opportunity to give everything you have for X amount of days, to be the fittest, the best teammate, everything. Like when this is done, you will miss these moments in time. And like, God, we would just sit and chat and hang out. And I was like, I am so fortunate to be able to go through this again with my teammates. And I think it gave me a different respect for the game, for looking side to side and knowing that you're doing it for something other than yourself. Because when I was at UW, you know, being one of the only pitchers, that's what the game was. It just took this different competitor to want to be at that level and not have to deal with all the social media stuff that these athletes have to now. But it's a different commitment to the grind. And that Olympic team, I was very fortunate to have, you know, 4 other women that I went with in 08 and had my back no matter what. And that was the most proud for me, was getting to do it again with them. When we won, there's nothing like that feeling. It was very similar to the national championship, where it's just that moment in time, the world stood still. It's like 5 minutes of like, shit, nothing can take away from this moment. As you know, winning some, like, you know, winning an Olympic medal and getting to be one of the first for your country when you came so close 12 years previous, it just hits a little different. So hard with family, hard on the marriage, hard being away from your children, hard when you have a job. But there's nothing like a mama with a goal, right? Like moms always find a way to get done. And it's probably one of the coolest things that I got to experience in the game.
Well, I think that the thing that I really really appreciate about you is that you're usually going to say what you think. And the fact that you were able to identify, I think you labeled it as being a bad teammate and being immature in the 2008 Olympics. You know, and again, I'm running a totally different race than you are, and Jenn, you know, and Jenn is, because, you know, I'm running a race on the other side of the country, trying to, you know, help build a team. And, you know, I don't want to say I never paid attention to what you guys were doing or what motivated you guys. But I think now, you know, when I look back on championships, I always like to hear what motivates people. I always want to hear what inspires people, what, not necessarily even just their goals, but how people are wired, you know. And you're wired. And I got a chance to coach you and got to see your wire and hear your wire and feel your wire and be able to share the dugout, and the same thing with Jenn, and go through drills and stuff. But the one thing that makes really good champions is self-evaluation, being able to identify or catch opportunities where they could get better. You know, I've done it a million times. You know, it's for all the viewers that don't know, you know, I'm doing a podcast with people that beat me for a championship. And, you know, that's not an easy thing to do for some. Like, how do you do this? Like, well, because it's not about me. It's about me being able to share experiences with other people and help my young people get over their fears. Like, who cares about the other team? Just focus on yourself. And, you know, and I think that's the coolest thing about doing this with you guys is, you know, you guys are champions, and and not only are you champions, you're Olympians, you're medalists, but you're also wired like Tim Walton. You're hardworking. You self-evaluate very well. You identify, hey, man, I wasn't very good leading up to this, you know. And so, Jenn, share your experiences, because, you know, again, I'm going to circle back and ask a, you know, not necessarily a tough question, but a how question. But share your experiences on you know, what it took. You know, Jenn's running a totally different race than Danielle, right? I mean, we know that, you know, and because you're talking about one of 15 athletes. You're not talking about a 25-man roster. You got 15 athletes from an entire country. You know, and again, you've got young players and you got you got the veteran players on your guys' squad. So talk about your experience there, Jenn.
Yeah, I mean, I think 13 years between two Olympics. Like Danielle said, what were we, 20, 21?
Yeah, just 21.
In 2008, like we were so young, playing such like just crucial roles for the team in the Olympic Games, and looking back, I was just going with the wind, right? Just trying to follow the veterans, follow the leaders, listen to them, hear them, trying to just like get bought into the system. But I mean, I didn't have any ownership. I didn't know how to have ownership back then. And I think, that 13-year stint, like I never was ready to leave the game. And I kept playing and kept playing and kept playing. And I had moments where I was losing my love and heart for competing. And that was actually in 2014 when I was traded from the Pride to the Pennsylvania Rebellion. I remember that summer when we were in like Brownsville, Pennsylvania. It was like a one stoplight town. It was a tough place to live. And I was just like,
you got traded to.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Lauren Lappin and I both got traded. And so Lapp and I, we're in Pennsylvania. And I remember saying to her before one of the games, like, I don't know if I'm loving this anymore. Like, this is hard. Like, why am I still playing, So then 2015 rolls around and the Pan Am Games were in Toronto. And I called Coach Smith and I just said, I would love an opportunity. Like, would you be willing to like have me try out again? He's like, yeah, come to tryouts. So long story short, ended up making the team. But I say this because there was like a couple years.
End up making the
years there was a couple years there where I was like, why am I still playing the sport of softball? I was like losing my love to compete and I needed to find the fire again. And I felt that 2015 was going to do that for me because the Pan Am Games were held in Toronto. And that's actually when we won a gold medal. But so keep going as we move along. And I go into grad school at UW with Coach Tar. And the Olympics were reinstated. And I was like at this crossroads of like, hey, do I start my college coaching career or do I go ahead and train full time? And when I say full time, I knew what full time meant and looked like because of what we experienced in 2008. And I wanted to do it. If I was going to do it, I wanted to do it completely differently than I did when I was 21 years old. And so I made the decision to train full time. And from 2017 until July 29th of 2021, it was 6 days a week, softball. And my mission was I knew that I was retiring. I knew that I was leaving the game. And I woke up every single day with the mission in mind because I did not want to have any regrets.
So it kind of sounds, I know that I hate to even say it kind of sounds a little like Danielle Lawrie-esque, like in that, when I look at her, I watch her, she's on a mission, like she's on a mission. And, but I saw your training. I got to see, obviously I've known you for a long, long time. I got to see your training stuff. And, I'm not even going to quote what I actually wrote down to quote, because I'm going to just say it off the top of my head. But everybody says they work hard, Jenn. Like, oh, it's the hardest I've ever worked. I'm grinding. I'm really getting after it. And they go, oh yeah, I was good. But to go through what you went through, and you wanted to go through it because you didn't want to leave any stone unturned. You didn't want to leave any regrets behind. You didn't want to have that feeling you had in 08. To go into the 2020, which you had to wait one more year to even do that. So you had to grind again, probably for 363 days. I'll give you 2 days off. You had 571 at the Olympics, 571. Like, you actually put the time into Jenn and mastered what she was good at and hit the best. It's the best recorded batting average in the Olympic Games history. So everybody says they work hard, but you actually not only worked hard, you went out and proved how hard you worked as well. I know you're super humble. You're not going to brag about your stuff, but this quote unquote defensive specialist was playing. I think you were playing first base at the time. Olympic. I mean, how does that even happen at your age to be able to go to a new position and then just flat out? I mean, you hit it. I mean, you are a huge reason why your team won. You know, the earned the bronze medal. I mean, I say that as a fan of yours, but I also say that as a softball observer. Going, man, you did what you went out to do and accomplish. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, my role, as time went on, you know, my role changed on the national team, right? Like Janet Lone came in and she was very good shortstop, very good range, very, very skilled, extremely athletic, and she beat me out point blank. So at that point, when that happens, like I'm the type of person where it's like I'm still going to find a way to impact my team. And so if it meant limited time on defense and a lot of my role was to like hit and impact the offense, then that's where a lot of my prep was going into. So a lot of my time spent was focused on hitting. And it was hard. It was grindy. We were facing hack attacks 3-4 times a week of 80 plus miles an hour. We were layering things, like me and Victoria Hayward, like getting after it. But like, I guess to answer your question is I knew my role changed. I knew what my role needed to be. And my role was to impact our offense. So my time was put into that. And then, I mean, obviously I was practicing at first base because I'm not just going to, you know, walk on the field and expect, oh yeah, it's a tough position, right? You need reps and you need time. I think it's a very undervalued position. So I say that just because my ratio of time was more offense to defense as time went on there.
Yeah. But you needed to be that. Like in my opinion, for your team to win a championship, you guys got to hit too. You can't just throw the leather around all the time. I mean, I think those are huge, you know, moments. You know, for you to be able to to self-evaluate, to say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I need to be. And you know, you said it was the best shape you've ever been in your life. And looking at some of the videos, and I think the article that they ran on you was like April before the Olympics, and April of 21. You're like, this is the best shape I've ever been. This is your last run, and you go through it. Man, you look at, I mean, you're got guns. You're in good shape. You look at when you're out there, and your swing is, you know, tight, A to B. I mean, and then you go out, and it's just cool to see somebody put the time in like you. To be something that you've always been, which is a good softball player, but to actually put the time in and accomplish something really cool because of your hard work. I mean, that's the end of the day. You earned everything that you, nobody gave you anything. You went out and earned it. And I think that's a cool thing for athletes. You're an All-American. You're a really good player. And to go out there and to be, you know, a bronze medalist and to win your, you know, Softball Canada's first medal, that's a big deal. But I think it's what I said to the beginning, is it embodies what I always envisioned, you know, Softball Canada to be. I've been on the field in 2010 when Softball Canada was playing the Pride, and, you know, going through the moments where Softball Canada is here on my field playing, you know, on that Tokyo run. So it's cool to see. I just think it's a evolution of us getting older, but the older we get, the smarter we get, the sharper we get, if we can really learn from our mistakes, I think, you know, so.
Yeah. There's a little bit of, so a little backstory on the body composition changing. So Danielle, she knows because she was in it. So Coach Smith, what year was it? Do you remember, DL, when he put that in place, the rule? Was it 2019, 2018 maybe?
With the fitness testing and having to like hit certain numbers? Yeah, that was, I was 19.
So we had, to your point about the competitive edge, right? He was super big on fitness. He wanted you to be physically fit in every aspect of the word. So we have this, it's called a gold medal profile, and you have to hit like certain benchmarks within each like test. And then it's either below average, exceeds standard, or like you're at the top, like exceeds expectations. So long story short, trap bar was our main baseline of overall strength. So when it was either 2018 or I think it was 2018 or 19, he put a rule in place that to make the Olympic roster, you had to lift 1.7 times your body weight to make the team. So
Yeah,
for
crazy, right?
me, with what I weighed at the time, that was going to be 330 pounds. Coach Walton, that was not happening. So I had to like dial some stuff in. But that's kind of, yeah. And then I'm all of 5'6", so
Yeah.
the bar has to be low.
So not only train harder, but also train smarter is what you're telling me you did too.
Yeah. So like, you want to talk about obsessing over this 1.7 times the body weight to get this trap bar off the ground.
Yeah.
That was,
I
was mentally gassed.
Full disclosure, in every dugout that I've ever been in when we played Team Canada, I always said not it to have to fight Coach Smith because he would take me in like a heartbeat because he was so just a monstrous of a man. Like I always said not it. I don't get that guy. I'll take the little trainer or whatever.
Coach Star, you got him. Coach Star.
Yeah, you got him. Yeah, that's funny. So tell me this. Okay, so just all you guys have all been collegiate champions, played professionally. You and Danielle, I saw you were an MPF All-Star 2011. I'm going to take a lot of credit for that. I mean, your head coach was kind of no. I'm just kidding. I take no credit for that. I give that.
You totally should.
But I think the just going through all of the levels that you played at. So you played in college, you played professionally, you played in the Olympics, and you go through all that stuff. So softball is, and in 2008 that softball is not in the Olympics in 2012. You already know that going into the games. So you play professionally, and you after your collegiate careers, you we'll say you're earning a living, and again, I think that's most people don't understand. And as I've talked to Natasha Watley, and I've talked to Mike Kendrea, and I've talked to several others, just trying to ask what's it going to take for there to be a sustainable pro league, something that's going to allow athletes like yourselves at the age after college to where you don't have to have a job, a side job, another job, and then still try to train. You could actually be quote unquote professional athletes and like you deserve. I mean, you guys are all the best of the best in your sport. So so softball's not in the Olympics in 2012. Softball's not in the Olympics in 2016, but it's voted back into the Olympics in 2020. It's added by World Baseball Softball Confederation adds baseball and softball in 2020. So you guys are both obviously in the national team, out of the national team, in the national team, and you more in than out. So go through that. Like now you're all in, and you got 4 years to do it, really, because the whole cycle is 4 years. So after you win the 2015 World Championships or 15 in Toronto, and now you go through that cycle. How do you do it? Like, what is that? What does that look like from a training standpoint, from a managing your social life, your family life? I mean, there's so much stuff in there, and you have to figure out, Softball Canada is a business. Like, I mean, there's money to be made, there's money to be earned, there's fitness levels to be attained, obviously. So how do you do it?
I had to make sure that I had conversations with Jenn and Rafter prior to coming back, because like our friendships with the grind, I had played over in Japan a couple years, and then I had Maddie in 2013, and then we had our daughter Audrey. Like, I kind of went into this different part of my life and had lost touch with them, and I knew they had been a huge part of that team and still committed to that grind even without the Olympics, which the utmost respect for those that have done that. That is a different commitment. Not having that shiny Olympics to be able to go compete at means they really are doing it for the love of obviously getting to represent your country and want to grow the sport. So that Canada Cup in 2017, I had reached out to Jenn and Raf and Coach Smith, and I said, hey, I want to come and like have a conversation and see if I could potentially try out for this team again. So it was getting kind of back in the same space as them and earning that trust back, where it's like, okay, if you're willing to put in the work in 2017 to get back where you need to be, I'd taken about 2.5 years off. So I did, and I worked probably the hardest that I ever did in 2017, just to be able to go to the tryouts in 18, proving that like I still got it. And that's, to me, was the biggest piece. Like, being out of it for that long, you don't take the competitor out ever, but I didn't want to have the same Olympic experience, nor did I want to be that older vet that potentially ruined it for everyone else. So for me, the important thing was like reaching out to Sarah Groenewegen and communicating like, hey, I'm coming back. I just want to let you know, like,
because
I'm not coming in to take the job.
She's a younger player coming up.
She's very young, right? She was at Minnesota. Like, she was a stud. She was one of the pitchers of that 2015 Toronto team. Like, she was kind of what I was for Canada. And then I retired, and then it was Sarah Groenewegen's turn, right? So sometimes when you have two alter egos that come together, it makes for a difficult, situation. So I wanted her to know, me coming back, it's mainly to help qualify this team for an Olympics and hopefully be a part of a team that can win an Olympic medal. And Sarah and I had our ups and downs because we're both like wicked competitors. And there is one moment that stands out, and I'm sure Jenn, can attest to this. After COVID had shut us down in Halifax in 2020, there was just some things going on with Sarah personally that I don't need to get into too much detail, but we had a Zoom call when we all got back just to kind of communicate what the 2020 year is going to look like. We still thought maybe the Olympics was going to happen. God forbid. I think we thought a lot of things, but I just remember saying, like, on the Zoom, like, hearing a couple things that were coming out of her mouth. And I wish I would have said it to her in person, but like I said, like, Sarah, the way that you came into training camp, there's no way that I want the ball in your hand if it's an Olympic medal game. You didn't work to the standard that you needed to. You've made this more about yourself than anyone else. At the end of the day, me being able to do what I'm doing with a family and kids, there are no excuses for the work ethic. If you're not willing to put in the work, then don't be here anymore. And at first, that's a hard thing to hear. She was pissed. She was angry at me. She, instantly goes into defense mode. And I tell you, we do not win that Olympic medal without that hard conversation and Sarah going to work on herself that following year. She came back a completely different person. And that is a conversation that I wanted someone to have with me in 2008.
I was going to ask you that, because to me, that sounds like you're trying to get rid of all of the things that you maybe didn't handle correctly or properly, or, and I think that's it. It's interesting because obviously there's two sides. Everybody's got their own, take on things, but to have somebody of your caliber recognizing some of your deficiencies as a competitor or as a teammate, it's interesting because I could imagine there could be a little bit of that. But if you're really, truly a good team, you're going to go, oh man, I can get over that because she's telling me the truth.
Well, shit, I'm going to win. We had an additional year. We had to do this all over again. Like, when they told us the Olympics was postponed, it was a no for me, dog. Like, I told Raph and Jenn, my marriage is on the rocks. This commitment that I'm doing, like, it is really hard on my family. I can't do it for another year. We hired an au pair from Brazil who lived with us to help with the training, as Jenn said. Like, it was a full-time job, and I had this ESPN gig. So it was challenging. And there's one moment that stands out in 2021 to me, and then we can get to Jenn. But like, obviously what was expected of us as athletes was a lot. The physical, the mental, the being away from our loved ones as long as we had been. And it was coming fresh off of when Lonnie Alameda had gone to the national championship game in 21. And we were living in Marion, Illinois. We're in these dorms. God, it was cicada season. So you just hear these cicadas all the time. We can't go into any stores. Like, we were like living this dorm, bottom of the barrel, like, life. It was so hard. And I think the one piece that was missing for me throughout that couple weeks that we were like really in it was like, we're doing everything that Mark wants us to do. Like, go and do this, practice here, you're lifting, you're monitored, everything's. I lost sight of what I need to do to fill my freaking mental piggy bank. So when we go to the Olympics, I know that I've done what I need to do too. Yes, we want to do what our coach expects us. But I remember like sending a group me or whatever we used as a team. And I said, let's all meet downstairs in the dorms. And I like just straight up said to everyone, like, I'm not in a good place right now, dude. Like, we are doing everything that is asked of us, but like, at the end of the day, like, I'm not filling up my bucket. And if I'm not doing that, I still have 50 plus days where I can't see my husband and my kids. Like, I need to make sure that I'm filling up that piece of my life. And so Lonnie came in, and I remember saying to Lonnie right away, like, I need more time to do XYZ. I need 48 hours. Like, I don't need to go throw a bullpen. I want to get my running in. I want to get my like head straight, because that's what I need. That's what I remember from 2009. Like, that's what I need. If we lose sight of that, or we don't know, what the hell do you think you're going to do when you get into the most pressure filled games and you have 5 Olympic games and you lose one you shouldn't? You're screwed. You have to know what you need. And I knew that I needed that break. And I knew that there was multiple other girls on that team that needed that break too. And they all verbalized that. And then that's when we as a team took a step back and took a couple days. And I think that put us in a good place to head into the rest of June and July to be able to do what we did.
Yeah, it's when you talk about that, like, again, I use this, as now being a college coach, a parent, being a professional coach, coaching the national team stuff. And I love hearing what you just said, what you need. And again, if what you need, and we're all doing this for the same thing, we all want to win, we all want to accomplish a championship. It's usually not going to be, I need less because I want to take it easy. I don't want to work hard. I need this because this helps me feel confident. This helps me feel accomplished. Like you said, it could be mental reps. It could be physical reps. It could be taking care of your body. It could be, you need this meal pregame or whatever it is, because I think that's really important. We as coaches sometimes, I think, can overcoach, not big games, but we can overcoach sometimes without taking into consideration what the athletes need. Again, at a certain level, sometimes athletes don't need it. You just got to tell them what to do because they're just not ready to tell you what they need yet. So, Jenn, go through how you did it. I'm always, I've been very fascinated with both your stories, just because, again, the age in which you accomplished greatness at the Olympic level. You did it as 20 and 21-year-olds. And I'm sure that was at the time that when you're doing it, forget about the loss, but that's the most accomplished feeling you've had to have in your entire life, 20 and 21 years old on the national team with Team Canada, and your first time hearing your anthem. Mm-hmm. What was your journey like, to get to that 2020?
Yeah, I, like kind of said a little bit before, just the first thing would be doing it differently than we did it in 2008. And then the second thing would be leaving no stone left unturned. So coming out of grad school at Washington, I was really, really out of shape. I was not ready to play softball at all. Physically, mentally, like, I needed to put a lot of work and time in to be able to, like, be proud, number one, of myself and my preparation to step foot on an Olympic field. And number two, to help lead our team and empower our team, because half of our team had never been to an Olympic Games before.
Which can be a good thing too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think us as leaders and as veterans, as Danielle kind of touched on earlier, because of some of the things that we experienced, we wanted to kind of write a little bit of a different story as leaders and vets for the Tokyo Games. And I think we, collectively agreed on that. And that I know for me personally, that was a big mission in my day-to-day was, yes, we have a responsibility and ownership of ourselves, as you're saying, continue to self-evaluate. But I really, really, and I know Danielle too, like, really took a lot of pride in, like, taking the young ones and bringing them up with us to empower them to be the best possible versions of themselves for what the team needed from them. So from September 15th, 2017, up until July 29th, Coach Walton and I was training full time. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah, no, I love it. But I think, again, it goes back to, being a college athlete and being professional are two different things, because in college, you've got this structure and you go through this whole process. You're told when, where, and how, but being, with Team Canada, I mean, it's kind of the same thing as being a college athlete. You got you got a structure, you got all these numbers to meet and all the things to hit. And, and the thing, again, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that model. I think that model is a great model because especially when you're trying to achieve something you've never achieved before, I would almost rather outwork than underwork anything ever. And I think that's the model that Mark took. And I commend him for it because I had plenty of conversations with him about things. He talked to me in several instances, text message, a couple phone calls. It was really cool to see, but I think that again, the thing that you guys did was different than most. You got your team together to go play in Marion, Illinois, in the MPF to be that. I think you guys did it. Australia, did the same thing because you're trying. It's one thing to train. Being a competitor and being a trainer, they're totally different things. I mean, you guys know that better than I would, but competitors, that's the one thing different between 2011 for you, Jenn, and getting to the Olympics. I mean, you're not competing on a day in and day out basis, and especially competing for something as valuable and as meaningful as a medal. I think those are things that are great. Danielle, being a parent, and obviously, I heard I watched this thing. It was really, really, I was really inspired, because you talked it's a really nice piece they did on you. And it says that, I will step on the mound and I'm going to absolutely demolish you. I don't care if you're my mom, grandma, or my brother or my kids. I'm a little easier on my kids as your mom. And again, I know, and I'm listening, and there's more context to that. This is just you being able to say, hey, I'm a woman, I'm a competitor, my mindset is this, and I've coached women for a long time. I love that mindset. So you're not talking about you as a person. You're not talking about, although maybe if you're driving to, you're going to cut someone off to get that parking spot up front. I know that about you as a competitor, but you're talking about competing at the highest. That mindset that you have is obviously something that you're going to pass on to your kids. And I appreciate that out of you because you're not afraid. You're a woman. But why do you have to compete different than me because you're a woman? And I love that about you. And I think that why? Because you're a winner, you're a competitor and you compete. But I think that you've also learned in 2006, 2007, you learned, how to compete better and how to have more confidence. And, I'm sure, is that you've been very outspoken about the mental health piece.
Yeah.
And I think that there's nothing, I actually really appreciate that because we all know that there's nothing worse than being in a dugout and the pitcher's on the mound and someone out of the dugout yells, "Don't walk her," one of those kind of things. Can you elaborate on your mindset and maybe a couple skills that you feel like you've learned about yourself because you've accomplished so much? The Olympics being canceled or being postponed, and I mean that in itself is a mental grind, but maybe some skills.
I think when I went back to go play again and come out of retirement and got that like niche when I was out there and walking around and getting to compete against people, it almost like relit that flame, but also like made it feel more meaningful. Like I've always said, and I read this book, like The Alter Ego, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And I like started to use that reference where it's like, when you cross the lines, like your alter ego, you can be like anything you want to be. And like, I was, and still am like obsessed with the Notorious B.I.G. Like I would play Juicy nonstop in my headphones and then combo it with James Taylor, which is the weirdest thing. But I think as pitchers, like there is such a big responsibility that you have when you take on that role to be out there, especially coming from a generation where it was only pretty much one arm. We don't have that as much anymore, but I took that so serious. And to me, and a lot of other people I've heard, Lorenz talk about it, like confidence comes through preparation. But to me, the preparation, the shit that I did when no one was watching was far harder than what my competitors were doing. Because that to me was my competitive advantage. And I knew going into that Olympic Games, I'm not better than Wayno. I'm not better than Monica Abbott. My stuff isn't as good as Kat Osterman, but I'll be damned if we get into an alley and we got a fist fight, who's going to absolutely go through it. Like, that was always my mentality. It was kind of like a fight club. Like, I'm going to outdo you.
You just weren't afraid.
I was never afraid. And I think that always been my thing, from us being able to beat Team USA in 2006, and them coming off of that Olympic medal and being told that we weren't supposed to win. And then we go out and we do it. And I was like, damn straight we did. Because I feel like I've always earned that right to have that mentality, win or loss. And the one thing I say to all the college athletes, when you struggle and you mess up, you got to know what you need on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday. Like, your routine and your preparation, regardless of what the team is expected of you, like, you have to internally know what you need. And I always knew what I needed and who I needed to just surround myself with. And male or female, women should be able to go and compete and be whoever they want to be when they're out there.
Yeah, I just think it's super unique, and unique that, again, you probably have not necessarily always been this way, but the blame game is such an easy thing to use in moments of we lost yesterday, and we played a great game. It was a beautiful softball game. Just too many mistakes. Both teams made mistakes, and they won. Yeah. And I told my team at the end of the game, it's like, listen, hey, it was a beautiful softball. If you watch the game, it was a great game. We lost. One strike away from winning, and it is what we got to get better at those moments. But not one person on this team lost the game. But me as a coach, I went back to, I had 7 things. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to say this. I need to make this adjustment. And I think those are things that we need as competitors, as athletes, as champions. You just got to identify how to get better, as opposed to blaming somebody else for not doing their job or whatever it is. I think it's huge.
Well, and one of my favorite players to watch, like Skylar Wallace, man. Like, to me, like, she kind of reminds me of like that mentality that Jenn and I had. Like, dude, I will do anything to win. You will follow my lead. Obviously, like, big on social media. So you just kind of like get this inside scoop to like how they go about their business. And I think that is the one cool part about the social media piece, is like, my daughters don't have it. But when you start to get to that age where you feel like you can go on it, when you follow badass women that really put out the truth of how they go about their business, I think it's so cool for other athletes to see, right? So, I mean, me, one of the biggest Skylar Wallace fans, someone that I even reached out to her, I want to say last year, I was like, dude, you would have been so fun, like, to be able to compete with and play with. Like, she's special.
Well, and I think, one of the things that, you look at Sabrina Ionescu, and you look at Caitlin Clark, 2 of the biggest female college basketball players, and one's obviously playing pro now. Sabrina's got her own shoe, and boys and girls alike are wearing it. And just to hear women talk about inspiring young boys and young girls to be who they are and do what they want to do, I think that, you 2 have completely, and I hope you take this responsibility. You've completely transformed what it means to be not only a champion, but a hard worker, a hardworking, and you both are totally different people, but you both have transformed your country's, your country's accomplishments by learning from your mistakes, by identifying cool things to get better at. But I think the one thing that you guys have done is you're really good at competing in the moment, because you're really good at knowing who you are. And I think that as a coach that has coached you, but somebody who has watched you as well, I think that's really, really special. Because of the time, we could do this we need to do this more. We need to get together and do a reunion of sorts, because there's nothing better than talking to some of you guys are clearly, and again, some of the game's greatest players. You've played at the highest levels. You've been great champions. You've been great ambassadors to the sport. And I'm super proud to know you, and to be, to be a small piece of being in the dugout and learning from you guys. You guys have been great for the sport, and keep doing. Danielle, obviously, just juggling the kids, and she offline, Jenn, she said, hey, Maddie's going to be really good. What's it going to take? We were already working out, side deals. I'm going to have a designer shade, sunglass and regular glasses for the Lawrie kids, or the Lott kids too. But I really appreciate you guys sharing and being so just transparent and honest. I think our viewers will appreciate the same thing. You guys have done this just an amazing level, and you're amazing people and very unique to be able to have competitors that are super honest and just amazing. But I really appreciate you guys coming on with us, and really appreciate Softball America being the gracious host of being able to help us grow the game in a positive way. So thank you guys for being a part of this. And I definitely look forward to your guys' success and your family's success along the way. Love you guys very much.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach Walton. We love you too. We have a ton of respect for you and what you do and how you grow the game too. So it's seriously an honor to be asked to be on here with you.
I've learned from the best.
Random, but when you coached us in 2011 and I had gotten your number, I realized that it popped up when you asked us to do this podcast, and I'll never ever change it, because back in 2011 I put you in here as my boo Walton.
Oh,
and it's never gonna change. I just want to put that out there for everyone to know.
Yeah.
My boo, we got Jen, we got my boo Walton texting me. I mean,
I love it. I love it. Well, you guys,
Awesome.
You guys are awesome. Well, thanks for being a part, and we'll connect offline. Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye.
Okay, bye.